Thanks for having me, first of all. And this is really hard. Here we go. I'm Michael. Most of you might not know me, might have never heard anything about me. I'm doing internet stuff since 1996 or something around those lines. I'm a designer, but also half engineer. I always fiddle around with open source, with engineering stuff. I use FreeBSD 3 point something to do design work. It didn't work. Worth a try. A couple of years ago, I moved with my family to Denmark, to an interesting place. It's pretty rural, right? It's very empty. It's 30,000 people living in the size of London, I think. And you would think, you know, those people spoke for 500 years there, they spoke 5 different languages. I think none of them spoke more than 2, right? They spoke a lot of different languages, and you might think this will never work out. But guess what? It worked. They thrived. In 1200, this was one of the biggest cities around northern Germany, actually. They managed, right? And I think that isn't just history. It's maybe a perfect lens for a challenge that we might face every day in our work, but also in open source. Where are we at, right? How are we building open source? What are we doing? We do know that we shape things, right? Big time. Open source enabled a lot of commercial stuff to happen. A lot of modern companies these days are like, we're open source, half-baked because we have a commercial model behind it, right? That's what open source did. But actually, as Scott said, as the other speaker said, it's maybe not the most appealing thing to users, right? No, don't laugh. I love all of them, literally. I'm a diehard open sense user, and I love it. And it's no blame, right? Because that's the best thing people could do at that time, and it worked. And it still works until today. It's super old projects, and they're amazing. But there's room, right? If you think about commercial alternatives for that, there's room for open source, right? These are commercial offerings in the very same ecosystems. So sure, as we said, right, AI can do that for us, can generate nice, smooth UIs. Why not? How do we do open source, right? How do you approach it, right? It's driven by engineers and by maintainers all the time. Maintainers drive their project. Designers don't even know, literally. They don't know open source exists. I'll get to that later. So we do a lot of other stuff in design land. Product people, where are the Microsoft guys? They're not here. Oh, there he is. You do see the value of open source, right? But your colleagues in other companies, no way. And I think that the biggest problem that we have today is we're meeting each other a lot of times with weird communications, right? With weird expectations and with potentially pretty blunt messages. I tried to do a couple of pull requests, not even pull requests, even just starting discussions with open source projects, and this is what I got back. It's a classic. It's okay. I don't take offense by that, but you see, right? Like as a totally stranger designer, you would be like, hell, stop. And it's 2 ways. I don't want to mock you because it's the same for designers, right? We are not learning Git, we're not learning GitHub, we're not learning what it means to engineer something, what it means to code something. We do need to meet you halfway too. We have a lot of work to do, as the previous speaker said. There's a lot of stuff we need to do. But my question is rather, how many languages do we actually need to speak together to be able to achieve something, right? And why would it even matter? I think if I learned something over these 2 days, it's that I've never seen people who care that much about their craft as you folks do. If I look at commercial offerings and people doing commercial work, the level of craft that is put into it is by no means at the same level that you put in your open source projects. It has such a high standard of technical expertise. I bet Microsoft would love to have that too, right? In some spaces. But, you know, you also have worries. There are buzzwords here, but I know there are a lot of open source projects which are scared of UX debt, of maintainer burnout, right? Merge frictions, community churn, projects going down again. It won't be less if you open up to other people, to designers. It won't be less worries that you will have. You will have to deal with other people. But everyone is afraid. You know, I'm afraid to stay here. I was afraid to give this talk. It's fine. You get out of your comfort zone. It's okay to be afraid, right? It's the most natural thing. And maybe that helps you to understand some of these things better, because this is what designers do today. And I'm not talking about open source designers. I'm talking about regular designers out there. This is what I do in the spare time. I would say 2.5 million hours a year. And that's a very, very pessimistic number. We design stuff. We think about stuff. This is fake. This never existed. Just someone made it up. Same here. It's a pretty nice ticketing app and whatnot, right? This is an operating system, maybe. I don't know. This is what designers do in their spare time. Beautiful. I mean, literally, this is really beautiful, right? There was thought process in here. There were a lot of things happening here, not only pixels. Could be Blender, actually. No, it's not. A Spotify redesign, right? People invest time, blood, and sweat, and tears to work with stuff. And I could go on for hours showcasing you what designers do in their spare time. And now just imagine if a little percentage of that will would go into open source tools. You know, we do this because of constraints at work. We do this because we want to apply somewhere. We need a nicer portfolio. So what do we do? Well, I don't have real work to show. I'm going to think about something, some fake case. And sometimes I'm really bored. Honestly, I am bored. I want to do cool work. And in my daily job, I can't maybe because I have to push a pixel for a button. So I do this stuff. Open source can offer impact. Impact people just, you know, can just dream about. Designers don't even understand that. They can have impact on millions of people through open source. No one knows that. There are no corporate blockers. There are opinions, that's fine, but there are no corporate blockers, right? If you find the right arguments, you can definitely talk to people. So let me give you a real-world example of what happens if open source opens up to design and product input. I found this project on GitHub 1.5 years ago, and they did an alerting system. It was open source. They had very little funding. They were a team of 2, and they had a website and an app. It looked, well, yeah, okay-ish. And we quickly aligned that I can help them, right? They asked for help. I'm like, okay, I'll invest a couple of hours here and there, wherever I can, just in the sense of open source thinking, right? 1 year forward, we had this. With a nice looking working app. It was pretty okay, right? End of 2024. This happened 6 months later. I don't know if you can read it. I don't know if, is there anyone from Elastic here? I don't think so, right? I don't want to say this is because of design involvement or whatever. But this is to show you the potential that opening up to that feedback can trigger something, right? Do we want this as a community? Well, you're laughing. I bet we don't want the exit, right? You don't want your beloved project to be exited. But maybe you want to have the impact and the quality and the love that went into it, right? And the passion and the outcome. If you look at these companies, I'm curious if you have a thought what defines them in their system. or in their ecosystem. I know Scott doesn't like Apple anymore, but what defines them beside being design-driven, right? These are design-driven companies by default. They're the state of the art. They have the most the easiest to use tools ever. If you look at Spotify, it wins not because their library is better, but because the UX is so freaking good, right? And they dominate all of their competitors. Do we want that for open source? I don't know. I personally would say, hell yes, right? We want that, like obviously. And I think there are small changes and really, really tiny little things we can do to get there. I think change is literally just you as engineers and one designer working together on one issue. That's already a change. And that can have a huge, huge impact. If that becomes your new normal, we can shape stuff big times, right? So my ask on you engineers is like, try to invite design and product input early on, right? Have conversations. Talk to us. For us, designers, it's important to learn the tools. For us, it's important to adopt your workflows, to learn your stuff, to embrace async feedback. We're very bad at that. We love meetings, we love workshops and all of that stuff. We need to get rid of it maybe in some cases. And I think product, we never talk about product input, but there are product managers in here, and they have a huge, huge impact on what they do. We're way, way out of that zone to invite product managers to open source. Maybe we should. I'm sure they're interested. Where and how? I don't know. I ran an experiment 2 years ago where I started to create a platform. It's not a community, it's just a platform where I try to educate open source projects and designers a little bit more about both worlds. It was as simple as this. Literally, put a design.md into your repository, talk a little bit about your desired process, what you want, what you don't want, just like you said before, right? Talk a little bit about what you expect, what you don't expect, and help designers to easily understand your needs and to find your project, but also yourself, like understand and have the conversations, have them. And guess what the outcome was of that experiment? Talking to designers, they're like, of course, I was not aware that even, what is OSS? Hell no, I don't know. Why would any designer do this for free, right? That's what you get from project maintainers. Of course I would love to have that stuff. Designers would think like, oh my God, my work has impact now. Hell, better than doing fake portfolio stuff, right? Apparently everyone is aligned. I think we have a number, and that number is again very, very pessimistic. It's 35,000 plus designers out there who don't even have a grasp about open source. They're living in their own world, they're working for big companies or small companies. They don't know it. How could they? Right? They have zero touch points with any open source thing, even though they work at Airbnb. Why would they? Engineers have it. And of course, you as maintainers, I'm pretty sure you're open to design input. Everyone wants it. It's not like you're totally against it. There are communities, right? We heard about it. It's great. I think it's amazing good. This is not meant to be a replacement for communities. It's just meant to be a, I don't want to call it a movement, but it's maybe something that can help break up these silos, right? To have engineers here, designers there. Maybe it helps to start stuff together, to work on stuff together, and finish stuff together as a team, like you do in your product work every day, right? In your companies, you have a multidisciplinary team, surprisingly. Why don't we do this in open source? I think at the end of the day, it's about visibility, guidelines, and collaboration on both ends, right? Maybe it's a first step. Is it the end game? No, hell no. For sure not, right? There are tons of things we could be doing, tons of things we could change, and tons of things that would evolve while we start to have those open conversations. But maybe it's enough to start with a small intentional shift that opens up our minds a little bit more. You know, what can this trigger? I think commercial tools don't have to be the benchmark. I think open source can bypass that easily because we simply can't build things a commercial offering can't. It cannot. Spotify cannot be open. It cannot integrate with Amazon, right? With Amazon Music. It's impossible because of the business constraints. Open source can do that. Why not? Right? We are transparent. We are aligned with what users actually need. There's no business case behind our decisions. Each open source project thinks about their users pretty deeply. I don't know, is this a new normal? Maybe. Can open source be multidisciplinary from day one? I don't know. I'm also not saying add your design markdown file and designers will just come, no worries. But maybe they will. No kidding. Because we can. And there are already projects out there which do exactly this. They're not run by big orgs. They don't have funding, no nothing. They exist. This is, for example, an app which does home automation, but also solar and car charging and stuff. It looks better than any commercial offering out there. It works even nicer. It's open to 500 devices. No one else would do that. No. This is where I work. It's a testing framework. It's called TestCube. We're open to design, of course. Of course, our files are public. Everything is public. Our processes are public. Join. This is a documentation platform, documentation tool. It actually already works better than Mintlify, from my perspective. But again, it's an open source tool. Workflow tools. There are many tools out there already doing this. And they opened up. And I mean, you always know that people gather around ideas and visions and maybe a project at the end of the day. They don't gather around disciplines. They don't gather around other stuff. People care, and you care. And I think it's literally as easy as giving open source more visibility to designers and help designers to get easier onboarded. If we can achieve that, I really think we're at 1% of what we could achieve, to be honest. Let's go.